Well, hello everyone. Here to show you that the telephone called home coloring activity right here. As you see right here is that we went ahead and drew right here. You say is a telephone, keypad, which most of us, if we have seen from the other videos, of course, I've done, related to like which calls Magic Jack and of course the phone accessories it is. But basically, is talk about what the telephone called, home it is like for talk about what telephones it is that knowing about that with the telephone the telephone drawing right here is like which is of a keypad it is, and anybody will probably thinking about that if you were to you say that you'll be making a phone call anywhere it was, if it was related to you say calling home, or if you were to call a few other places it was. I remember making a few phone calls myself, and of course telling my parents it was, is knowing about that, yeah, the experience of that what you get. It's like knowing about with me that the telephone that I remember using at home, of course, was not did not take place on a computer. It took place on an actual telephone it was. And I'm sure anybody here has probably heard a telephone during the time of say of any art activities I've done. You say of course on my YouTube page it is, and knowing about is like with the phone it is. And anybody probably think about that whenever the phone rings, a lot of times you begin to wonder who is it. But other than that they have right here is like with the telephone. And besides with the telephone ringing it is, and whenever a telephone rings, a lot of times that you get an answer, and that a lot of times it could be unexpected call or anything like that. But just knowing about that basically talking about as the telephone called home it is I picked this title was due to the fact because that this type of stuff, of course, that I used to always remember that whenever I used to hear the sound of it, the intercom, whenever I was in school, it was you hear the sound of it, the intercom. And I can remember if most of us, have ever, had any type of a walkie-talkies. It was, one of those toy walkie-talkies to where you can actually talk through them and, talk to your friends. It was, and within about that you would be able to talk within about maybe a few distance from them. I think it was about maybe about 200 feet, that they get about 200 feet in range. It was those toy walkie-talkies, which they were probably about, I think, about 10, 11, $15. You say at like other retail stores it was. And knowing about that whenever you were to use a telephone it is that I know with me that I have not really did any type of research around, is knowing about with between like prepaid the pay phones it is, between prepaid contract phones it is knowing about whenever you make a phone call, a lot of times, like especially at the pay phone it was. And I know my parents have probably have experience, what it's like to going up to a payphone. It is that they say that's not that bad. All you gotta do is just put money in there, and then it will allow you to talk for about maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then it would tell you that you gotta put more money in to be able to extend your talking time it is. And anybody will probably think about if you're at the airport and you're talking to somebody, talking about an important matter it is, that more likely that you probably need more time, more than 10 minutes, and it asks for about maybe 5 cents more it is. And knowing about that, anybody probably thinking about that, yep, I included a ruler, of course, too, because knowing about, anybody probably thinking about it with those rates, that go up it is. Anybody probably think about, what does a ruler have anything to do with what we're talking about with the telephone here? I'm like, well, excellent question, is knowing about if it's a matter of measurements about how far in range from where the call where the call is going out for any incoming calls it is. And but basically that I can maybe explain this on the computer, but like I said maybe about a few dozen times it is talking about drawing it out, is that I would tell anybody who goes to my YouTube page it is knowing about that yeah, that it's like talk about enjoying is that sharing my talents for what I can do, not really the fact about not trying to be a show off here, but knowing about that yeah, that anybody who be watching is knowing about, it's like this is what I can do. It's like I can not really talking about like I'm a big kid, look what I can do, but But other than that, anybody will probably think about, if you were to get on a computer, it could be a Mac, or you say a PC, or maybe an iPhone, or Android. You say iPhone 5 or whatever, and just knowing about anybody probably think about that. You may hear about maybe on the commercials, and maybe on the advertising, and maybe on the manual too, that they're so easy a kid can do it. It's like, I remember a lot of those insurance commercials, it was that they would say that so easy a kid can do it, it is. And knowing about that, really, it's so easy, maybe a kid can get in trouble, if they're caught while doing it, or whatever it is. But knowing about that, what you have right here is the keypad, and I, of course, said that I'll go ahead and draw right here. It's like, some examples right here. You got right here is the mouse, and let's just say that if I can draw right here is a mouse cursor. So say if you were to point the mouse at like what calls like one of these numbers right here, and then dial it, and a lot of times the numbers would appear on this line right here. Of course, like with Magic Jack, that a lot of times that with Magic Jack, it would start out with like a one, I think it dial one, and then of course with the area code it is. You got right here is for the area code, and then after that, and then of course is the number it is. And a lot of us will probably thinking about that with the number it is, you dial the number, and then from the number, it could be like what you call is like a 352, you say area code it is. But anybody will probably thinking about, if you were to be dialing a number on here, and just knowing about that the whole fact about why I call this the telephone called home, it is knowing about that with this type of stuff that usually that they would have it to where back then at the schools is knowing about that you would have a telephone. And I can go ahead and maybe draw like what you call like a picture diagram, which I'm talking about right here is you got right here is a telephone like this right here. You say it look like this right here, and then I can, this was at the school, at the elementary school, whenever I was, calling, say my parents, say calling my mom, and it was, and knowing about that, the teacher would like to talk to you by an IEP meeting. That's I think it was an IEP meeting, and want to talk to her about something, so I would call the home phone it was. And anybody would probably thinking about that who called the number it was. And if I can remember right, that of course that the phones were like this right here, but then you would have these touch buttons right here, to where that you would be able to call the home phone number it was, from the phone it was. And whenever I made the phone call, it was that I could remember that it was like that. It would be nice if we had something like this at home, because I can remember over the intercom that at one time that I wanted, whenever I was in the main office, it was over there at the elementary school, it was that I can remember that I'm like, I would like to go ahead and talk to the phone. They had like what you call like the intercom speakers. It was for the intercom, if you want to get a hold of the teacher for any reason or anything like that, make an announcement. If I can remember right, that I want to get on there and maybe make an announcement, especially over there at the high school where I used to go to, that I wanted to sing the Star Spangled Banner or something like that. Like, and I'm proud to be an American, and then it goes like I pledge allegiance to the flag. It's like do the Star Spangled Banner. And we're talking about that maybe singing the Star Spangled Banner, and then everybody in the school that would be hearing you, it was, and just knowing about at the time, I was like, well, I don't know if I feel embarrassed about that, as knowing about everybody will be hearing me sing. It's like, so far as like, I'm proud to be an American, well, at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who gave that life to me, and I gladly stand up next to you, and I find it still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land, and God bless the USA. But other than that, like talking about, like talking through the intercom it is, and knowing about anybody who probably think about it, it's like, so far as the Star Spangled Banner it is knowing about like, I pledge allegiance to the flag. Oh, say can you see, and by the dawn's early light, and what's so proud of it again, and at the twilight's big glass gleaming, and just brown stripes and bright stars. And then because I remember every morning that a lot of times, especially over there at the middle school that I went to, that they would have you stand, men would hold their hands over their hearts. It was, it's like, so far as for the national anthem it was. And every morning that they would have all the kids do it. It's like, for I pledge allegiance to the flag. And even younger kids that anybody will probably think about, why do you think it's so important, is knowing about, it's like to see the honor, for our country it is. And basically that anybody will probably think about that, if they walk into the classroom every morning, it wasn't just knowing about that they go to the desk, and then next thing you know, it's like you say, I pledge allegiance to the flag, and anybody probably thinking about that it's something that I guess that get for the whole class can do, and just something that didn't want to sit down at the desk right away and do their work. It was. And I can remember, I could probably tell anybody here that I can remember those couple times that each morning whenever I went into school, is knowing about the teacher would say that please have a seat. It's like, okay, today we are going to be working on this assignment, something like that, and that knowing about that if you have any homework or something you got to turn in, it was, and then you would turn in the homework, it was. But I already hinted that knowing about that with whenever I was in school, that if you wanted to use a phone there, then sometimes that they would allow you to go into the offices and then of course use the phones. It was. And I can still remember, of course, I think the number it was, it's like 442006, I think something like that, was the home phone number. I can't really say anybody like knowing about that. It's like, what's the number? The number is not good anymore. It's like knowing about, it's like I can still remember maybe what the number was, but on the other hand too, that knowing about if you're trying to call somebody or whatever, then knowing about to make sure that you get the right number, it is. And nowadays with technology, that if you're talking about, like when I say a screensaver, like on a computer, let's just say if the screensaver were about right there, it was, you'd be able to have it to where if any of us are familiar with like Skype or anything like that, is like you'd be able to look up a number in a phone directory. It's like have access to, like, would say, a phone directory anywhere in the country it is, or anywhere worldwide where you have a phone directory where you can look up different numbers, and if you want to call anybody, it's like search about what the number is. But anybody probably thinking about that, like a Yahoo or Google search, you'll be able to do that. But anyway, is talking about that if most of us are familiar with like how to work most of these settings right here, is knowing about that like on magicJack, if most of us are familiar with like this part right here, is that right here is that there'll be like which calls like a bar, like a tag bar, about right here it is. And anybody think about that, and then you would have like a green dot about right here it is. And knowing about if you talking about what type of service, if you had 911 emergency service activated on there, and of course that you address to where that I think that you would be able to add a line for you to be able to add a contact. It's like talk about, it's like if you had to use the phone in case of emergency, it was, and then that you'll be able to add a number on there, add your number on there, just so that way they can find out where the calls come from. But basically it's knowing about really that knowing about exactly where the calls come from. But let's just say if the word go ahead and use these right here, because knowing about that this type of stuff that if you be doing research is like so far with C. If we start with say with the letter C right here, it's like for CALL, by say for call. If you can call anywhere in the world, who do you think you would call? And knowing about with me that I can remember that of course gotten into trouble at times too, is like whenever like talking about that see something in the catalogs and then I want to go ahead and buy it, I'll go and call the number it was and be like so I got in trouble a couple times for that. But on the other hand too, that knowing about with most kids, you'll probably think about if you were to get on the computer it is and maybe touch a few buttons, it's like I know a few kids is like talking about so easy, maybe a kid wouldn't want to do it. But like with me, I tell anybody here that I had 9 phones altogether, here, at home here. And so in case if the phone rings, it's like talking about with 9 phones. And then I could tell anybody that why do I have so many? Well, because I like to collect them, because there was a time, a true story too, there was a time to whenever that I did not even have a phone at all, and that if anything I only had one phone to use, it was. And that knowing about that, anybody would probably thinking about that yeah, with 9, 9 seems like a big number, for the amount of phones. And anybody has asked me before, I'm like that yeah, where are they located, and well, why do you have 9 phones? And anybody who asks, I may tell them that the question more likely mean is like, where are the locations, not really about why I need them. And anybody will probably think about, if the number goes to 12, let's just say if you get 12 phones in the whole house, do you have all the manuals to them, and of course about how they work? It is talking about the connections too. It's like, how are they connected? And I can explain to anybody that, of course, that I got like the Magic Jack, and then of course I have Skype, and then of course I have a few other phones provided by other companies too. And that knowing about that, anybody who probably thinking about that, the time for whenever I didn't have a phone, and knowing about the phones I've had used in the past, it was, and talking about, it's like if you maybe memorize the number, if it's what you call is like a 636 area code number, it is. I can tell anybody that this was the type of stuff that I really wanted to have whenever I was young. This was the type of technology that I wanted to have access to at home, because at home that I can remember my family and we only had 3 phones around the whole house, and of course they were not wireless, and I remember buying those toy phones, and I can remember be like that anybody who asks, I just feel like, hey, it's knowing about that phones. I'm like that. I guess I am that kind of person that likes to collect phones, because that I made a joke one time. It's like if I wanted to put a phone inside the refrigerator, it was, and knowing about in case if something goes bad, that more likely it would alert me, or maybe the health department or anything like that. But anybody would probably think about any type of phones that, anywhere in the whole house, but that you like to put one at, maybe in the laundry room, or maybe in the weight room or anything like that, and maybe the closet, if you want to put a phone in the closet. But anyway, that in the garage, maybe in the garage, but like a phone, connector, wireless system connection like this. Anybody will probably think about, it's done on the computer, right? Well, if it's done on the computer, then more likely that what are you going to do? Let's just say if you don't have the computer on, and let's just say if there's a power failure, is this still going to work if there's a power failure? And the way I think about it, go ahead and draw like the mouse. Anybody would probably think about it, it's like draw like the mouse cursors right here. Let's just say if you were to point the mouse anywhere, say on the screen, it was, and that knowing about this is basically the way that you would work a mouse. It's like you would work the controls on that mouse pad, and you'll be able to move the mouse in different directions, different directions on the screen. It is. Right here, right here is the mouse cursor about right here. It is a mouse cursor about right here, and a mouse cursor at about right here. Anybody will probably think about that. Yep, whenever you move the mouse around, it is in different parts of the screen. If it's about right here, just to click on an icon or a dollar number, it is. And then of course with menus, anybody will probably think, if any of us are familiar with with Skype, that you're going to have what you call like something such as contact, and then menus. And basically that most instruction manuals would probably say that they can't really explain about knowing about just follow the on-screen instructions. It is. But basically, is if anybody is familiar with, like, we say for Skypes, and of course with contacts, and of course with convention, say all those other controls, such as Skype to Skype, Skype messaging, it is. And but anyway, this type of stuff right here, anybody would probably thinking about that. This type of stuff that I used. I had gotten quite a bit of experience, not on the computer, but like on an actual phone line. It was on an actual phone, and knowing about it, that what was the reason to why I would call the home phone. Maybe explained. It's like talking about. It's like from the other video. It's like talking about if they only give you maybe 2 inches or 3 inches of line space, to be able to ride in. Everybody probably thinking about that the 2 or 3 inches of line space it is, and that knowing about like right here, it's 2 or 3 inches of line space, and you'll be like, hey, it's you only have about this much space to ride in. Well, they want you to explain the story. What was the reason for your phone call, especially if you were calling from the school? It was, did you miss the school bus or what? Like, no, I did not miss the school bus. The teacher had to talk to the parent. A lot of times it was related to either the teacher or that you forgot, to bring, you forgot something. If you forgot, to bring something from home that you should have brought to school, whatever it is, a form that you had to sign a couple of times, and the teachers wanted me to bring a form home to have my parents sign, it was, and bring it to school, it was, and if you forgot something or anything like that. But anybody's talk about with the time, and then of course maybe explained before, talk about the calculations, and you say what the calculator it is. But anybody probably, like I said before, that anything that you would want to bring at home, a moon that you can take home with you, it is knowing about that. Anything that you would that inquires maybe a push of a few buttons, it is maybe to turn it kind of clockwise, whichever it is, over, upside down, whichever it is. Anybody will probably think about, really, I don't have time to mess with this, especially if it's not going to work. But anybody probably think about that. Either you don't have time to mess with it, or you don't want to mess with it. Which one is it? But other than that, as I talking about that you have right here, it's like with all the other stuff about so far as the telephone called home. It is like knowing about a telephone that anything that more likely that you may have used at school or somewhere. Maybe in the church building or anywhere like that you're probably thinking about that wish I had this at home, but knowing about anybody probably thinking about, what do you have to say now? Well, me, that knowing about is like, be thankful for what I do have, and on the other hand too, that knowing about it, that are some things that maybe I don't have either, and on the other hand too, to think about is like, I guess it's to say it's always a possibility to work on to where you can get for what to make help improve for what your needs compared to what your wants is, knowing about the types of things that maybe that we do have that maybe we just don't think about. Anybody would probably think about, really, would you take that extra time just to know about how to learn it, and of course about for what it would take for you to be able to get to that point to where you'll be able to use it. It is. And then knowing about with me that more likely, I would probably say that more likely would take the time, because on the other hand too, that knowing about like with most phone calls it is that that there was a time to where I was out of touch with most friends and family. It was due to that because of with no phone it was, and besides without a car that anybody will probably think about. It's like that nowadays they have it to where like on Facebook it is. It's like if you have it to where you create a username and password just to get logged on Facebook. And we're not talking about a 17 or 18-year-old kid. We're talking about between 10 and maybe 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old kid that more likely to be allowed to have their own phone it was, and be able to make phone calls it was, and people probably say for emergency uses only. But other than that, as I talk about, say for the call, as I talk about, was for your telephone called home, is talk about the story about it's like what you have access to, to use at home. And so far as know, it's like how I learned it, and then knowing about it's like concentrating on the fact about that. The stuff that you learn is basically the stuff that more likely I'm sure you'll use, and in the long run, and anybody probably think about is that if you may have got rid of it, upgraded to something else, and just knowing about if it requires any type of math or research, it is knowing about how to get it to work, it is. But on the other hand too, that knowing about is like really, if it's a fact about knowing about, is like how it works. And anybody would probably think about that. Yep, do you think the next source of technology is going to require the fact about, yep, you need it for school? you need it for business or whatever, or is it, hey, you seen it at the store and so you decide to buy it and try it out and get some experience. But I know with me that over the years that I have gotten experience, whenever I was in school and of course at work. But on the other hand too, in case of like emergency reasons, I usually think about that. Is like if I see something in the store that I know that more likely I'll use, more likely I'll get it, and more likely I will take the time to figure out, about how it works. But other than that, but you talk about, it's like for my story, it's like talking about, it's like for what I can do is talk about, it's like, for the telephone called home story, it's a coloring activity.